When is the last time that you've sat down and analyzed the lessons learned through the most difficult years you've ever led, and how have you celebrated the ways you've grown? What have you been willing to discard that needs to stay discarded? And then what are you going to hold on to that would hopefully be something that you can, as a team, as a school team, as a leadership team with your staff, focus on as this is where we're leveraging the most outcome. Principal Matters Podcast, episode 293. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the school leaders podcast, where each week we bring you innovative, imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. This week, I want to share lessons in change, a bonus episode with my friend, Dr. Garth Larson. Dr. Garth Larson is the co-founder and CEO of First Educational Resources. And if you had the opportunity to listen to Principal Matters Podcast, episode 292, in that episode, together, we discussed a profile of a school leader. I highly encourage you to go back and check out Principal Matters episode 292 for an intro to Garth, even though he's been on my show before. But this great conversation that we had on the profile of a school leader. This week, I want to share a bonus track because as Garth and I were opening up our conversation, we dove really quickly into catching up with one another about the history of our work, things that had happened since the pandemic had been in place, the changes that both of us had experienced in shifting to hybrid and virtual learning, as well as ways that we were able to still leverage some in-person training. And when we finished, I just asked Garth, in fact, you'll hear this in the conversation, if we could take this some of this content and just create a bonus episode for a couple of reasons. One, I thought it might be helpful for Principal Matters listeners to think about the way that your work environments may have changed and how all of us have had to adjust the way that we service and support others. Two, the lessons that we've all learned through shifting to different deliveries with the people with whom we connect and serve. And then three, the importance of reflection and resilience and the application of new practices in order to maximize all the lessons that we've learned in the last few years. Sometimes I don't think we pause and reflect on things that we are practicing now that are completely different than just a couple of years ago, and how that may also alter the way our students, our teachers, our staff, and those we serve are thinking about their own work. So I hope you enjoy this bonus conversation with Dr. Garth Larson. Garth previously worked as a director of learning for Winneconne Community School District in northeastern Wisconsin. He was an elementary principal. He was a central office assistant superintendent. He has been leading with his organization for several years now, First Educational Resources, and you can find more information about him at firsteducationus.com. Also, if you want to continue to connect with Garth learning as well as learning that I'm connected with this summer, join us for an upcoming virtual summit, the Learner First Leadership Summit, June 21st through 22nd, 2022. You can find more information at www.firsteducation-us.com. And if you want to connect with Garth by email, you can reach out to him directly at garth@firsteducation-us.com. Thanks, and I hope you enjoy this episode.
So what before we get going, what else is new with you?
Man, the pandemic definitely gave me a new perspective on gratitude for the work I get to do with this association. Because when the world shut down, I was still able to really just sit still and work with leaders across Oklahoma like everybody else was, just figuring out what to do. It was actually really good because the pandemic forced our entire team to learn how to work virtually and remotely, which was good. And they're back in the offices now there. So I've enjoyed the work. And then in my podcast, and I wrote a book since we've seen each other with Jimmy Costas and Jeff Sewell started a publishing arm. So I did this book with them, Pause, Breathe, Flourish, which is the one that I signed up for your summer virtual thing.
Oh, cool. Okay.
It's still happening. And then,
we just did a whole new blast today. By moving the dates, we're hopeful that the numbers will look a little different. So we've had a pretty good uptick here just at the start today, just with a new look. Plus, adding Michael Full into the keynote list doesn't hurt in any way, shape, or form. So, trying to figure out some ways to figure out how teams can use this. Our hope was that they could see this as kind of a lead into some of their leadership retreat work, whether they attend the live sessions or they just use the videos.
What are the dates?
That's kind of June 21 and 22. Let me just double check that real quick. Just called the Learner First Leadership Retreat, or Leadership Summit, sorry, via the website. But it's right. It's one of the first things you see when you click on our website. It goes to a pop-up of our Back to School Summit, which is happening. It'll be our first in-person event in 2.5 years, which is happening in August. And then it also shows the Leadership Summit as like a pop-up right away that people can click into. June 21, June 22.
So how's life been for you?
It has been unbelievably incredible. I'll say this. When the pandemic hit and we were on our way to Florida, we were supposed to head down to some friend's house in Naples, Florida for spring break with our kids. And we saw things were starting to get shut down. So we canceled our flights. We hopped in a car, hopped in our vehicle. Our friends hopped in their vehicle. We took off. We went to Florida. In the midst of the 26 hours it took us to get there, every single contract that we had going canceled on us because they didn't know what was going on. Things were in terms of things that were supposed to be happening over the course of the next month.
Yeah.
And at the time, Tammy and I were also building a new house, so that doesn't fare so well. So we got to Florida, we called our builder, said, hey, we don't know how the next, month is going to go. Get the house sealed up. And then, we'll wait to see what's happening in terms of this pandemic. Now, luckily for us, it was only about a 2-week window there. And then more people started reaching out saying, we need help. We don't know what we're doing. And in the midst of that, that's where we really kind of redefined our company structures too. So, we went to where it's kind of just me and, we'd go out and hire different consultants to do different work, but it was a lot of myself and a couple of our really, co-authors that I'd worked with.
Right.
To the point where, we've added, so then we created the different divisions. So our literacy division, our math division, science and ag, SEL, assessment and grading, which is kind of the staggered division. We have our publishing division. We have our data division. So we have 10 different divisions now that each have their own directors now that oversee. So it's kind of like 10 small companies all working under our umbrella. And as a first lens, our goal is, we support the work that's going on. The one that I missed was our Observable Impact Center, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And, we started just doing some free webinars for people just to kind of get them accustomed to us. And probably the best thing we ever could have done. We've added over 1,000 school districts in the last calendar year. We've over 100 different consultants now that are working with us, and not all of them are working full time with us. Obviously, we've got a variety of different people that we work with, just as similar to our relationship with you, or somebody like a Jimmy or somebody like that. But I'm not saying this, we can't keep up. We just can't. And so what I've had to do is look to next year. I've completely almost cut off all of my consulting days now, just to be able to, I think you and I have talked about this in the past. It's kind of scope of influence, right? So I looked at the first 10 years of our company. I was out doing a lot of consulting, just like I was a teacher, right? And, and getting into the schools. Now that we have, 14 team members that are just on our executive team now, my job is more like that of a superintendent and kind of truly helping manage and support them. So it's good. We found some different holes in the market that I think we're missing. Like math, I can't even tell you how fast our math division is growing, where there just hasn't been a lot of great support out there unless you're a textbook company. And so, in terms of the instructional practices, so it's been fun. It's been an interesting learning curve. We added our instructional coaching division, which on Wednesday and Thursday this week, we're sold out. We have 1,000 instructional coaches that'll be on a 2-day summit with us. That we just never could, and a waiting list. And now it's almost at 100 people just saying, can we just get access to the videos? And then I don't know if you saw, we started Edflix. Have you seen that at all?
No.
Or so Edflix, we bought a company out of Chicago that it was effective January 1. And they had created a really cool platform. It was called PD Personalized, and it was it was kind of on-demand PD, that type of stuff, similar to what you might see with like Global PD with Solution Tree and that type of stuff. But they had a good platform. They just didn't have great content. And we had gotten involved. They had hired us to do some of the videos, but it was very, I don't know, just wasn't exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up approaching them to buy the platform from them, rebranded it as Edflix, and the whole thing, it's like Netflix but for educators. And all it does is it takes all of our live PD events that we do, and we're doing, we do probably right now about 6 or 7 live PD events a week, and it captures them all into one platform where it allows teachers to be able to access any of our live events within a couple days, where they can go in for 90 days and they can watch anything. So Greg Wolcott's doing his Better Behavior Blueprint series starting today. That'll go into Edflix. Any of our Edflix subscribers have access to that for 90 days, and then it comes back out. They can do certificates, they can get CEUs for it. It's just, it's a way to kind of rethink about how the current structures of what we're putting out there, how we can get it in front of more people. And it's a 12-month subscription that people sign up for. And I tell you what, Will, they get way more doing that than they do signing up for a single event, because it's actually cheaper to get an Netflix license for a full year than it is to just attend one live event. So so it's just, that's
brilliant.
A lot of different things.
So brilliant. I'm so proud of you guys. So I'm just trying to picture you and Tammy on that drive to Florida, and those calls back to the construction company to wrap your house, and also just because I know how I felt then. I Principal Matters LLC is just my side thing, but even then my contracts all stopped too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everything I had planned to travel was just in the air, and I was able to rewrite those plus some new ones. And for the last year, I tripled the amount of PD I was doing, because I can now do it virtually.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm traveling so much less than I did before, but I'm doing way more work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just one person that just does it on the side. I mean, I can't even imagine how much sleep, how much weight, how many years you gained in those 2 weeks of just trying to figure out what is my livelihood going to look like.
Yeah, it was. But I think we had the utmost confidence in our team too, and so we would do, we would actually probably every about 3 or 4 days, we would do full virtual check-ins with all of our kind of internal team members, and just say, hey, there's ever an opportunity for us to think differently about what we want to do, now is the time. I said, nobody can predict what's going to look like a month from now, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, but let's kind of dream big and see, because I have the utmost confidence in the team as well, and they really got after it. They started thinking a little bit differently about everything we could do. And what we noticed as we kind of watched and kind of sat back and watched, what different groups were doing out there. There are a few that they couldn't think differently. They couldn't think outside of the box. You think about like a SDE, who, staff development for educators, who have been around as a reputable company for years, and they had to close their doors, which is sad too, and the other thing that we did was, when we decided to go full on with our first really big virtual conference, and ended up that July trying to our Learner First Virtual Summit, which was, we'd always done our in-person events during the summer, and we said, let's try a little bit differently. Let's sell building wide licenses and get people access to these videos, because they need it. They don't, they're struggling with what they need to do. And I think that first event, like 15,000 people that had access to it. And we know that it was just a little bit different. Now, we've learned a lot about how to eliminate some of the technical glitches along the way, and those types of things. But I think it's given the whole pandemic gave everybody a closer glimpse into each other's lives, each other's, like being able to be in your office with you right now, even though we're 1,200 miles apart. Like it's just different. And there's so many, as horrible as it's been, from a societal lens, from an educational lens, from a support lens, I think this is probably one of the best things that could have ever happened to us.
Well, something else I appreciate about you too, Garth, and I know we haven't even started our interview yet, but I'd love to pick your brain about your work. is you're such a good systems guy. So I'm just curious, as you know, for instance, when you invited me to do the June summer conference with you guys, you immediately followed up with a Google Doc where I could update my bio, my presentation titles, all my contact information, anything that I wanted. And I immediately saw the other presenters doing the same thing. And I thought, you just saved yourself 15 man hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
By asking us to just jump into a shared Google Doc, because that's a system. And so I'm just curious, like, and Tammy may be a systems person too. I'm just curious how your systems changed when you had the pandemic.
Yeah, I think with the systems was the trust, right? You know, so if I look at everybody that's on that Google Doc from the leadership summit, we trust that people know what they're doing now in terms of how they can handle the technical aspects of some of these things and go in there and input it and update it. And because we found that a lot of times we were kind of doing the same thing anyway. We'd update, then we'd send it back to you, take a look. Does this work? Does it not work? You know, send me your descriptions. Even this morning with Michael Fullen, because we were updating his keynote, I sent him in. I said, Michael, just go ahead and take a look. Because he's like, well, what exactly do you want me to do with the keynote? So take a look at what everybody's doing over the course of the 2 days and figure out where you think you have something that fills that void. And he sent back, he goes, that was one of the most helpful things for me to do to figure out how to identify a keynote that's going to make sense for this event. I just think people have also become more comfortable, right, with technology. And you know, I think the one thing about Tammy and I, we've always looked at, no matter what, whether it's, you know, Will Parker, whether it's Jimmy Costas, whether it's Cale Burke, whether it's Jenny Donahue, we just look at them as partners in the work. So let's always approach it that way, as partners in the work, you know? And so I don't know, we just try to figure out ways to maximize trust and maximize time, because there isn't more time in a day. That's the one thing that has not changed in the pandemic, is there's still only 24 hours in a day. And so, yeah, that's just kind of,
wow.
I think we just kind of learn, right? And figure out what's the best way to do things. Even when we post, I think we have probably right now, if you go on our website, we probably have 55 events people could sign up for right now. And we've even figured out just the systems of how to maximize registrations, maximize invoicing process, maximize, you know, the marketing side of things. And Don Smith, who eventually you'll meet Don, I don't know if you've ever met him before or not, but he's our vice president now. He's a marketing systems thinker. So, you know, he sits and he looks and says, okay, how are we going to make people aware of the 55 different things we have going on right now without it making you feel like, oh my gosh, you're just overwhelming us with information? And so he's had to really, really think through that. So those are just things that we've learned over the course of the last couple of years, especially, you know, it used to be pre-pandemic. You could really only run, like, we only had the capacity to run one event maybe every 2 weeks, right? Because you're in person, you've got all the logistics behind that. You've got it's Tammy and I, and then whoever the presenters are, and that's everything. Now you can, when we know that we can run 3 or 4 events in the same afternoon, it just has maximized how you can get different information out there. So I think it's a combination of everybody kind of learning and growing over the last couple of years.
Well, kudos. And Garth, we might have to share this out as a bonus for Principal Matters listeners. So I'm just going to, in case I do that, I'm going to speak directly back into like anyone who might listen to this if we decide to share it out as a bonus track.
Sure.
So Principal Matters listeners, let me just say something, if this is a bonus track that we share, that I think is such a great takeaway from this conversation with Garth, which is, when is the last time that you've sat down and analyzed the lessons learned through the most difficult years you've ever led, and how have you celebrated the ways you've grown? What have you been willing to discard that needs to stay discarded? And then what are you going to hold on to that would hopefully be something that you can, as a team, as a school team, as a leadership team with your staff, focus on, as this is where we're leveraging the most outcome, and how can you keep pushing forward with that? Because Garth, that's what I've seen you guys doing, and it didn't come easy. None of that, and nothing that school leaders has been through in the last 2 years has been easy either. But I would hate to have walked through all of that pain and not have figured out, where did we grow muscles that we didn't have before?
Absolutely. And actually, Will, as you bring that up, there is a pretty cool reflection tool that Cale Burke, my co-author of PLC 2.0, and I wrote in the middle of the pandemic for teacher teams, which it was called Back to the Future as a reflective tool. And it really was talking about, okay, how do we take and look at what we've learned through different perspectives from the last 2 years. So if we think about what have we learned about our parents or our families over the course of the last 2 years during COVID learning, what have we learned about our learners, and what have we learned about ourselves, either as leaders or as teachers, and what are the things that we absolutely knocked it out of the ballpark on? Things that if no matter what, we want to take that and take it into the future, because we know that, if we learn that, for example, one of the number one things we've heard from teachers over the last 2 years about students is that they value the connections they get at school. That was something that really became evident when we got thrust into this virtual learning environment. So we said, well, if they value the connections and the relationships when they are in either a virtual or hybrid learning situation, how do we take that and realize that they value that when they're with us every single day? And how do we make that a priority? And so if any of the listeners want to take a look at that collaborative tool, I'm happy to share that with them. I know you'll send out my email address, but it's just called Back to the Future. And it was just again, Cale and I both kind of have an infatuation with 80s movies. And so it's actually built around the whole Back to the Future movie. But it's just a collaborative tool to reflect, learn, identify what we want to take into the future in other contexts. So I'm happy to share that.
Yeah. And Garth, I'm just going to go ahead and say your email address so that I don't forget, but it's garth@firsteducation-us.com. Is that correct?
Correct. That is correct.
Fantastic. Well, what I would like to do is give an opportunity later to go back and edit and just share out some of this off the air conversation as a bonus opportunity for people just to hear you talking about your own growth as an organization and just some of those lessons learned too. All right, that's a wrap. Man, that was so rich.
Yeah, sorry. No, it's hard because it's kind of some thinking out here that without having visuals, but hopefully they can take away kind of the big ideas from it.
No, that was so good. And was there anything in our intro chat that you wouldn't want included if I do a bonus?
I don't think so. There wasn't anything.
Okay, because I was asking you about your journey and your story and all the pandemic.
It's all factual information. We're building the house. Okay. We had all contracts closed. I mean,
well, sometimes those personal stories like that can open up things in people's brains that, especially when they start applying it to their own, like, oh, what have I been learning through all of this? So I might do that might be a 293 where I just do a separate intro and just say, hey, if you caught Garth at 292, you're going to hear the bonus track here where we just talk about the lessons he's learned leading an organization through all of these changes, just like you led a school through all these changes. Right,
exactly. And I have to say, what an amazing connection you made to our original conversation about the first goal that we had as a company, which was to pay for a trip to Disney. So I hadn't even actually made that connection until you just brought that up about that was it. That was, I think I had shared with you, maybe I didn't, I was probably a little bit more professional about it, but I remember sitting in my office and I had a paper towel that I'd taken off and I just wrote goals for a company. 1, don't suck. 2, pay for a trip to Disney. So, I mean, that was it. That was like 2 things that I had written down on that. And so the fact that it is kind of interesting full circle that now heading back down there to go watch our daughter, because actually that was the year that our daughter was born.
Oh, Garth, my heart's just singing. Yeah. This is so beautiful.
Yeah. That was the first year that she was born, and now it's that's 11 years later. So
you need to call Tammy and put all those dots together. And
I'll do that with her.
And just go out.
Her office is right over here now, and so when I get off the call with you, she'll say, "Will made an incredible connection."
You guys have a milestone to celebrate. Well, I'm so proud of your work, Garth, and
we appreciate everything you do and the friendship as well.
You can find free resources like this one at my website at williamdparker.com.